Illegal immigration. This administration has been just a horror show on the border. We have had worse illegal immigration every single month under the Biden administration than we have had at any time in American history. We now have literally thousands of children being held in detention. I remember when that was a major issue in the United States. Apparently that is no longer a major issue in the United States because the president has a D after his name. In one of the most hilarious stories of the day, Mayor Eric Adams of New York, again, part of a party that is a big proponent of illegal immigration and simply catch and release on the border. He is now complaining that too many illegal immigrants are arriving in New York City and it's straining the city's social services. Here was Eric Adams, mayor of New York, who, by the way, remember that time that he was elected in order to lower the crime rates and that didn't happen in New York City? And it turns out things really are still really bad there because it turns out bad policy is just embedded in the New York governmental structure. Here's Eric Adams complaining about the influx of illegal immigrants into New York.
This is a real burden on New Yorkers as we're trying to do the right thing. We already, as I stated, we already have an overburdened shelter system. So now we're talking about, as you stated, food, clothing, school. This is going to impact our schools because we do not turn away individuals because they're undocumented. Translation services. There's just a whole host of things that this is going to produce, and that's why we need help.
Meanwhile, by the way, Mayor Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C. is making exactly the same complaints. She said on national TV that her city's homeless shelters were filling up because of buses being sent en masse to the city from Texas and Arizona. So they're perfectly happy to have illegal immigrants swamping small towns along the border so long as it's in Texas and Arizona. But when major cities, big cities, like D.C. and New York, are forced to take in a couple of thousand illegal immigrants, then it's a strain on social services in the city. According to NBC New York, the problem in New York City is exacerbated by its right to shelter mandate, which means any homeless asylum seeker who comes to town by any means must be put in a bed somewhere. Again, that is a bad policy. The city does not have a duty to put homeless people in a bed somewhere. That's in what way should the city government be forced to put people in a bed who shouldn't be in the country in the first place? Again, the goal here should be to put people who literally cannot take care of themselves in a homeless shelter. And we have many private auspices for doing so. We have private charities that provide tons of homeless shelter beds and all the rest of this. But the idea that the taxpayers of New York City are supposed to now have a duty to provide a bed for anybody who just shows up in New York City, that's going to make your city into an illegal immigration magnet, is it not? I mean, that's what has happened in California, for example. According to Adams, quote, currently New York City is experiencing a marked increase in the number of asylum seekers who are arriving from Latin America and other regions. In some instances, families are arriving on buses sent by the Texas and Arizona governments. In other cases, it appears individuals are being sent by the feds. He said more than 2,800 asylum seekers had entered the shelter system in recent weeks. So by the way, I'd just like to point out here that tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people are arriving at the southern border every month, and tiny towns in Texas and Arizona and New Mexico, these places are being swamped by illegal immigration, and anybody from these towns who mentions this is a bigot. If you are in a town in California that population 6,000 and 500 illegal immigrants show up on buses, and you start complaining, hey, this is straining our social services, this isn't what we bargained for, then you're a bigot. But if you're in New York City with a population of 8, 9, 10 million people, and 2,800 people show up needing homeless shelters over the course of weeks, then apparently the New York City mayor is allowed to complain about the strain on social services. The offices of both Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Arizona Governor Doug Ducey denied Adams' claim. They said in separate statements they were in fact sending asylum seekers to Washington, not to New York City. So people are being redirected from Washington, D.C. to New York City. A spokesperson for Adams responded to the pushback claims, saying governors should have more compassion for those seeking asylum in the country. I love it. I love it. So if you're Abbott or if you're Ducey, we need more compassion from you. If they show up at our door, well, I mean, that's kind of dicey. I mean, do we have the resources for these people? But Texas and Arizona should take hundreds of thousands of them in. Millions over the course of the year. The spokesperson said, quote, if they need financial help, they should ask for it instead of heartlessly sending asylum seekers on their way with a one-way ticket. Why? I mean, I thought that you guys are more charitable. Isn't the kind thing to do to send them to Washington, D.C., a place of open hearts and open wallets? Why exactly is it bad that they're sending people? I thought that would be like it's a great opportunity for them to visit the halls of the federal government that have allowed them into the country despite the fact that they have no legal right to be here. The spokesperson for Adams said, quote, in New York City, we have a legal and moral mandate to provide shelter to everyone who needs it and will continue to fulfill that mandate. But as we have said, we urgently need federal support to help us do so. Oh, you mean because of your bad policy? According to the New York City Department of Homeless Services, there were 28,885 individuals classed as a member of a family with children in the shelter system as of Sunday. That's about 12% higher than the daily average in March. The last month for which such data are available is 12% higher than this time last year. Adams said the city needs additional federal resources immediately. He said that they may struggle to provide basic services if they are not received. Again, we're talking about a 12% increase in homeless shelters in one of America's biggest city, America's biggest city. And this is swamping the social services right there. But again, if there's a problem in places along the Texas, Arizona, Mexico border, then that's just racism. And you're not supposed to pay attention to any of it. The Democrats definitely in touch with the needs of the people. Meanwhile, Democrats continue to push forward with their radical rhetoric with regard to abortion. Remember, they want executive action from Joe Biden, not just on climate change, but also on abortion. And the arguments, I'm never going to stop saying it because they keep making bad arguments. The arguments that the left keeps making on abortion are bad and weird and kind of ugly. Nancy Pelosi, yesterday, the Speaker of the House, soon to be the minority leader, she says birth control is a kitchen table issue. I don't know what you're doing on your kitchen table, but all right.
We want to be sure that people know what this means in the lives of America's families, or not even families, just in terms of American women and their decisions. Indeed, we must ensure that American people remember in November the truth. While the Republicans seek to punish and control our most personal decisions, what could be more personal than that? And this is a kitchen table issue. This has an impact on the finances of a family in addition to the health of a family.
Abortion is a kitchen table issue. And fewer kids around the kitchen table is a kitchen table issue, especially if you can kill them before they're born. Meanwhile, NBC News is doing its best for on behalf of alarmism, highlighting a woman who is being sterilized over Roe versus Wade. So she's so afraid that she might get pregnant that she's now being sterilized. Now, listen, if she really doesn't want to have kids, then I suppose more power to her in being sterilized. That's a more responsible decision than actually getting pregnant and then killing the unborn baby. But I'm just going to point out that a society in which people routinely sterilize themselves to prevent pregnancy does not seem like a healthy society.
After the draft decision was leaked, I decided to schedule the procedure sooner than I had originally anticipated.
What was it about that leak that made you say, I'm going to do something for myself now?
Well, I've always known I didn't want children, and I didn't want to be in a position where I didn't want children and would lack access to contraception as well.
So, like Megan, I have always known that I didn't want kids, and when we started seeing more of the restrictions coming through, that's when I scheduled my first consultation appointment. You're told that you are too young to make this decision, or what if your significant other wants children someday?
What if you change your mind?
What if you change your mind? What if you regret this someday?
Okay, and apparently that's bad. You're never supposed to tell people that they might regret a decision to, prevent themselves from performing their most vital, evolutionarily biological function on planet Earth. You wouldn't want anybody to feel a little bad for that 30 seconds while they think, hey, maybe I might want kids 10 years from now. But the broader point is this. If these people were using abortion as a form of birth control, then this is a better, honestly, I'm very much against people self-sterilizing to avoid having kids. I think that it's an actually personally immoral decision because I think one of your fundamental purposes on this earth is to produce and rear the next generation. I don't know when that became a controversial position, but apparently it is. But listen, we're a free country. You're allowed to not have kids, obviously. But if you're going to choose to not have kids by getting sterilized, I prefer you do that to having a baby growing within you and then killing the baby within you. The fact that NBC News is positing this as some sort of horrific side effect of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, it seems to me that if you're killing fewer babies and you're achieving the exact same purpose that you wanted to achieve anyway, it's actually a better solution than you killing babies in the womb. By the way, Kamala Harris had a wonderful statement about abortion. These people are so out of touch. She said that, allowing abortion doesn't violate your religious faith. These people do not understand religion. They do not understand morality. It's amazing.
We must also take steps to protect other fundamental freedoms, including the freedom for a woman to make decisions about her own body. And on this subject, it's important to note that to support a woman's ability, not her government, but her, to make that decision does not require anyone to abandon their faith or their beliefs. It just requires us to agree the government shouldn't be making that decision for her.
You know, allowing people to hold slaves doesn't violate anybody's religious precepts. I mean, after all, that's a personal decision, people holding slaves. So it doesn't violate anybody's religious precepts. If you say to a religious abolitionist that, it doesn't violate your precepts, you just don't have to hold slaves. These folks don't understand morality. They don't understand religion. They don't understand pretty much anything about anything. All they understand is that they want what they want, and it's all a power game. Did you know that every single like creates one additional leftist tier? That is just science.